Welcome back to another episode of Once Upon a Quantum Leap. I'm Capucine and
I am Paul Madar.
hi, Palmadar.
Hi.
Um, gosh, I don't know. I'm just like, I've got to stay in my skin because next episode is just so exciting for me. Paul's going to call something silly, but I like his silliness. He's going to call it that he's in a mood for pyramid plasma.
Plasma?
There you go.
Like blood?
Uh-huh. What you're going to hear in this episode is a proposal by Paul. He's been exploring the formation of the pyramids, what that has to do with technology, our interior technology. So he's got a proposal for you.
Hmm.
It has to do with plasma, has to do with the four states of matter, and all of it has to do with the pyramids. So stay tuned.
So this is one of my favorite topics of all time. Pyramids, pyramid power, ancient Egypt or pre-Egyptian stuff. So yeah, try to contain me.
All
I dare
right.
you.
I don't. I'm not going to contain you for this one.
And I've come up with so many proposals and ideas and trying to decipher pyramids over the years, probably centuries. Um, and so I have a working theory at any given moment. You can drop the needle and I'll give you a working theory of how I think the pyramids were built and what they were doing and what the technology was. So we're going to talk about where I am today, and we're going to weave in intuitive research and intuitive reports, of course, because that's what we do.
That's right.
So we're going to base it off of some really interesting clues that we've gotten from the intuitive research, both from Casey and from other sources. So where do we start?
Well, this is where we're going to start, Paul. You've got a proposal. You want us to think about something that you've been pondering, working out for a while. Let's start there.
All right. All right.
Where's that?
Yeah, we can start with that and then we can deconstruct the
Mhm.
pieces and then maybe put it all back together. Um, so, okay, without explaining too many things, I think this is what I've put together is that these pyramids, they actually used very natural properties that are available at all times on this planet. Very natural properties based on the earth and water and the sky and the ionization differential between the sky and the earth, and that these pyramids tapped into this, what would be called a plasma field in the sky, in the atmosphere. And there's a way that you could tap into this differential and create an electromagnetic energy source and distribution center. And there's some really cool principles that happen when you create these electromagnetic standing waves. They actually can be used to create gravitational effects when it's in a controlled environment, like a very precise pyramid with precision architecture. Maybe.
Maybe.
So I'm thinking that they knew, whoever built this thing knew something about using these very natural technologies and creating gravitational effects with these electromagnetic standing waves and could control them. And
But
that's
point
where
of,
I am today with
well,
this.
today, point of clarification, you said something about the pyramids as an
Yes.
entity, or did you and or
Primarily, I'm looking at the Great Pyramid. However, we got pyramids all over the planet. More and more are being uncovered. They'll excavate a mountain that they found in Central America and go, huh, look at that. There's a pyramid under there.
well, are you
And
saying that the pyramid did this energy, or the
yeah,
people who created the pyramid use this energy, or is it both?
um, well, it's hard to separate them because the people that designed and built the pyramids obviously knew about this technology, and then they guided the the use of this energy and the distribution of this energy. And but the pyramids did the work. Like they tapped into the atmospheric plasma ionization field and channeled it into usable form, and we're able to direct it and use it then.
So the pyramids were able to do that.
Yes.
But
Pyramids, plural.
the creators who created the pyramids also used a similar process that the pyramids were also using.
Yeah, that's the cool part about this. Ooh, yeah, good that you brought this up. I think these pyramids are symbolic of what we can do personally. Like there's a personal principle going on here that is in macro form still on the planet. Like it's a giant reminder of what we have available to us on a very personal level to use this technology to create with and harness energy and direct energy within our lives.
Okay,
So, yeah,
let's now
we've got to
let's
break
break
this
it out.
down. Yeah,
Let's break it down. I call it the 101 version. Break it down into as much 101
yeah,
dialogue as possible and visuals because you're good at
yeah.
that.
Well, we probably have to start with the four states of matter. What is even this plasma that I keep talking about? Everybody knows solids, you know, the desk, the microphone, the stuff, the walls, the house. And then liquids, everybody knows that, waters and whatever's. Gases. So we're going back to high school chemistry class here. If you take a solid and you energize it, eventually it's going to melt, right? There's a melting point, and that creates this liquid. And if you energize it even more, if you cook it, it's going to vaporize, right? So it'll turn into a gas, the gases. And then if you add even more energy, it'll turn into something called a plasma. And a plasma is kind of like a supercharged gas that has ions in it, positive and even negatively charged ions that are these particles. And these positives and negatives, they can be organized almost like a fluid of sorts. So that's why it's called a plasma. And you think of, plasma as your blood or within your blood or the matrix that supports the blood. But this plasma it actually is everywhere in the universe. It's like 99.9% of the universe is operates in this plasma state of these charged particles that operate in a fluid kind of medium and that can propagate waves and yeah, that could be manipulated and used.
Okay.
So those are our four states of matter: solid, liquid, gas, and plasma that we
And
know
that
about at
and
this
that
point.
just makes up the universe for as long all the time, infinity, forever. This
Well,
is
that we know of
that
right
we know
now.
of.
Yeah,
Okay.
there might be a
Okay.
fifth state of matter, dimensional matter or something.
Okay.
But that's what we can work with. That's what we've observed now is these four states of matter. You can think of them like a hierarchy of energy. So the slower, lower energy is solid, and then it scales up to a much higher energy up in the plasma realm. And think of
So a solid could be it's a fixed position. It has shape, it's definite
yeah,
shape, it has volume.
looks like it's not moving.
Looks
Yeah,
like it moves at a slower,
very slow, so slowly that we can't put our hand through it.
but
Yeah,
it's still energy that's moving, but it's a slow move
yeah. So
energy.
think of ice,
Okay.
an ice cube, an ice block, that's your solid. Then if you heat it up, add some energy, then it becomes water. You could put your hand through the water, right? If you heat it up even more, it turns into this water vapor, like a gas.
And
And then,
particles are moving faster.
yep, particles are moving faster and it contains more kinetic energy. And then if you add even more energy to that system, then you get this really interesting effect that it becomes organized into a supercharged um, ionic, like a liquid, like a field of this plasma. And it has very distinct properties that can be used. And studied and directed.
And can we see that? So that's different, right? It's higher, it's moving at a
It is
faster pace.
observable, yeah,
It is
yeah.
observable.
And the
Okay.
effects are observable too of
How
this
is it
plasma.
observable?
By charge, by electric charge. Like this field can sustain electromagnetic energy and electromagnetic charge, and it can propagate waves, and you can have standing waves, you can have propagating waves, directional waves within this plasma field. We don't
So,
think about it a whole lot because we think of plasma as either coming out of a volcano as magma, or we think of it as deep in the earth as magma, or we think of it as in between galaxies or solar systems as this charged plasmic field, or as like solar ejections, the sunspots that solar ejections that come out of the sun, that solar wave of energy that is sent through the solar system and hits our planet in a constant stream, that's a plasma as well. And then our planet has a response to that. Our planet creates this ionized sort of shield uh, that in response to this wave of plasmic ejection from the sun. And because of that electromagnetic shield that we have around our planet, it both protects us from this wave from the sun, but it also creates a charged atmosphere around our planet that we could tap into if we only knew how.
and that charged atmosphere is still part of the plasma or is plasma?
Yeah. Yeah, that is the plasma. Yeah,
Okay.
the charged
Mhm.
atmosphere is the
So,
plasma.
so that what you described was, as I'm visualizing it, it transforms itself. It just takes on a different
Yeah.
formation
Think
as
of
it comes
the northern
into,
lights,
uh-huh.
that would be an effect of this plasma field.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's got to be a way that we could harness that and bring it to Earth, right?
Well, I don't
Maybe
know.
if we maybe if we built a giant pyramid and put just the right shaped crystal on top of it, maybe we could channel that energy from the atmosphere, draw it down or attract it somehow and connect the circuit down to the Earth, right? That's what happens all the time with lightning is there's this differential of positive and negative between atmosphere and Earth. And every once in a while, it's like scooting your feet across carpet in the wintertime with socks on. You build up a static charge, right? And every once in a while, you touch a doorknob and go and discharges that differential between you and the doorknob. So that's lightning, and it seeks to balance the charge between the atmosphere and the earth. So maybe the builders of this pyramid or these pyramids understood that on a grand scale, we could harness that energy somehow, that electricity.
Okay. Now, why? Why do you think they thought that, or tell me why? I know we
Yeah.
have pyramids.
Yeah.
That poses the question of how were these made?
Yeah. Like who came up with this?
Came up
How
with
did
it. How was it
hunter-gatherers
done?
come up with this?
Mhm.
That's where we get into our last episode where we're not from around here originally. And the intuitive reports, all over the intuitive reports and research that we've had, say that um, we're not, we're only partially from this planet. We're involved in this planet, but we arrived from other realms, other dimensions, and came to this planet to investigate and learn about creation and explore and experiment. But most likely we had a tremendously different understanding of energy and creation when we arrived. Bit by bit, I think we got sucked into this whole world and forgot it. And the intuitive reports bear that out. That we're in this leap of in between knowing our connection with the universe and forgetting it, and then slowly remembering our connection with the universe.
So before we go into that, there's another question I have that will help, hopefully brings a gap for me. Um, so we have contemporaries, Casey, Tesla, other other theoretical quantum groups that talked
Hmm.
about free energy. So
Yeah.
I'm moving us forward, and I'm using the word contemporary because it's within our
Yeah. Last
time.
100
Yeah.
something years. Yeah.
Um, so talk about using this energy. How did we, on a contemporary basis, understand it? And then let's go back to how this looked in the pyramid
The
time.
ancients. Yeah.
Yeah, ancient.
Yeah. These days, I if somebody talks about free energy, they're usually relegated to the fringe. The fringers talk about, ooh, there's free energy available. There's this infinite energy, and we can tap into this free energy and distribute it to everyone, and there's abundance for all. That sounds pie in the sky. I think it's actually true, and a lot of people think it's actually true. But for modern day scientists, they say, yeah, no, there's no such thing as this free energy or zero point energy or um, and I think it's primarily because we have this scarcity mindset of, and especially in a capitalist society, we think of things as scarce and resources are scarce. And you got to collect your resources and then you distribute these resources and then you charge people for these resources. So what are we talking about with free energy for everyone? No, we've got to make a buck on this thing. So I think that's where the this free energy gets tamped down, or the free energy idea gets um, relegated and suppressed.
Yeah, so free for me, meaning that we all have access to
It's available at
how
any
this
time, anywhere.
technology works, this energetic technology
Yeah,
works. Um, some of us just aren't, we're just new to understanding even how it works.
yeah,
Um, but you're saying that there's a little stop right now because from an evolution standpoint, we're still as humanity, a civilization, very attached to who has power over it, who has control over it,
yeah,
how
yeah,
can we monetize from it
yep,
versus going through hopefully a not so long time period of it has nothing to do with that. It just has to do with what we all are capable of doing and accessing.
yeah,
So
yeah,
our intention is not to keep it held within from that place of power, but that would require individuals and collectively doing the work to change their own perspectives.
yeah. And I think we're getting there.
Mhm.
It seems pretty slow, but I think humanity is bit by bit, we're getting to the point where we're we're realigned with that the principles, universal principles and universal energies and connectedness instead of this individual compartmentalized
Mhm.
perspective of, I'm over here and you're over there and we're not connected. You have a separate body than me, and your country is separate than our country, and this planet is separate than all the other planets in the system. And yeah, that's a separation mindset, but we weren't always that way, and we're not always going to be that way in that
And then,
separation mindset.
so you had also mentioned that in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, Edgar Casey tapped into a little bit of this information and only
Yeah.
was very, very clear about we're just not responsible for how to use this technology yet.
There were some people
Then,
that asked him about
right.
how were the pyramids built and what did the pyramids do? And he did describe quite a bit, but he stopped short of actually explaining what the technology was. He did drop some really good hints in his intuitive reports and his readings of how they were built. There were some gravitational effects that they knew how to use, and there was a power distribution system, pyramid to pyramid and pyramid to um, machines and vehicles that were present at the time. And we just lost all of that technology because of this deep dive we've been doing collectively as humanity, deep dive into immersion with the physical world and engagement with the physical world. We kind of lost our tie-in with universals for a little while, I think. And with
Yeah,
the kind of that separation.
back to the cycles in different episodes. We talked about the different
Right, right. Yeah.
cycles. So we became more dense. We became more solid.
Yeah, identified ourselves with density and solidness
Density,
and
solidness,
physicality. Right.
physicality, form,
Yeah.
volume. And so then we were slowing down. Our frequency was slowing down.
Yeah, we became dense.
We
Yeah.
became dense, right?
Yeah.
Which
And
kept
so,
us again separated from the higher frequency of
yeah.
this type of energy.
And just imagine if there were a few individuals that had this technology, this vast unlimited power that you could tap into, and the rest of humanity is kind of dense. Uh, if they didn't have a mm, higher consciousness, if they were also of low consciousness, but they happened to have access to this power, man, they could just dominate everything and everyone on the planet.
Mm.
And I think that's from the intuitive research, that's kind of what happened. There was there
So we
was a
have
group,
safeguards. Hmm.
yeah, there was some groups that had lowered their perspective and lowered their consciousness and had become entrapped, and they did get access to this power, and they essentially blew themselves up and blew up these these power centers and kind of set us way back into the Stone Age, basically.
Oh gosh, that's right. I remember a couple of those intuitive reports
Yeah.
during the Atlantean, which cycle was around. I
End of
remember
the fourth cycle.
fourth
Yeah.
into the fourth cycle where people were experimenting
Yeah.
with this power, but became very engrossed in the process
Yeah.
meant to them. They lost sight as well or removed from it. I
Yeah.
remember those reports.
So we essentially lost our responsibility privileges to this technology for a while
Mm.
until we can almost like, I don't think it's quite this way, but almost like we have to earn our trustworthiness with this energy and with this technology again
Mhm.
on our way up out of this mire that we got ourselves into.
Well, so Nikola Tesla had figured something out and
Supposedly, yeah.
supposedly, right?
Yeah,
Refused to say what was
right.
understood about this technology because
He didn't want it falling into the wrong hands.
yeah.
And somebody with this lower consciousness grabbing this power and dominating the rest of the world with it. So
Mhm.
he said, "Nah, I'm gonna die with this secret," and
So
and did
do you think he really knew?
probably, yeah.
Okay.
My contention is that it's a really simple technology, like so simple, it's staring us in the face,
Mm,
and we've just overlooked it and weren't quite willing to go there, probably because of that scarcity mindset.
okay.
And Westinghouse's, I think it was Westinghouse that said, "Where are you going to put the meter? So we can cash in on this.
Yeah.
If it's free energy, nobody's got a meter and nobody's making money. So
Mhm.
let's not do that."
All right, now take us back to this technology in the pyramids. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, take us back to like what did this simple technology, how did it manifest?
yeah.
How do we see it? How is it visible? Yeah, just give me a scenario.
Well, we have to go way back. So, first of all, mm, there's quite a bit of evidence that shows that the pyramids were not built in 4000 BC or whatever the timeline, the official academic timeline says. There's a lot of evidence that shows that they were actually pre-dynastic. They were overhauled and they were like renovated in the time of Khufu and Khafre, but they were around, well established, way back into the Younger Dryas era, like 9600 BC, or even before that. So just roughly think about 10,000 BC was when these things were most likely built. And that indicates that there was a technology available and an understanding available of global proportion, like an understanding of the size of the planet, the resonant frequencies of the planet, the cardinal directions, the you name it. They knew about the solar system. They knew about the processional of the heavens and the of star clusters. All of that they knew at that point, and that is what got forgotten. So we're 10,000 years BC, and we build this massive power center. What we're finding more and more about pyramids is that they're built over water sources, either right next to water sources, and they can channel a river or a lake or something underneath the pyramid, or they're built right on top of an accessible aquifer because they're going to use this water to do some hydraulic systems to have some water pumping up and through these various chambers inside. So it looks like um, these were either electrolysis systems or ionization systems, or both, really. I think it's both, where they're either splitting water into gases and then charging these gases. So go back to the solid liquid gas plasma
Okay.
idea. So if you're taking water, your liquid, and you're turning it into its component gases, and then you supercharge the gases, you've just made a plasma,
Mm.
right?
Okay.
And if we've got this massive structure built out of stone, there's a way that we can contain this energy. We can contain maybe the heat that's being produced, and we can direct and channel this energy in some way, uh, and and use this ionization of this plasma field
And use it to
to do.
create.
Yeah, like what do we do with this?
Okay.
Now that we've got this thing, I can just see the builders. They built this thing, and now what do we do with it? So from
So let,
Casey's research and other intuitive reports, like with the School of Metaphysics, what we've pieced together is that um, there was some kind of crystal on top of the pyramid, like a massive crystal of a very particular shape. And they didn't go into description of what the shape was, fortunately, or somebody's going to make this thing and harness this energy again. But a very particular shape of crystal on the top of these pyramids that would both receive and transmit this energy from the atmosphere, from this charged plasma above. And we're creating this either splitting water or ionizing the gases that were uh, formed from splitting this water and harnessing this energy. And then we can distribute that energy out through this specially shaped crystal. And then that energy is in wave form. It's a frequency at this point.
okay.
And that frequency can be transmitted at vast distances across the globe.
Wow.
If it's in like radio waves, like either AM radio waves or short wave, or yeah, we can transmit this energy in wave patterns, and then you could receive it, just like radio receivers used to have crystals, you know? So you'd have a tower that's broadcasting radio waves, and then you've got your little transistor radio or a little crystal-based radio, and then the crystal vibrates according to these radio waves that hit it, and it translates this little vibration in the crystal into translates it back into sound waves, and you listen to your favorite song. So that same principle could be going on a huge macro scale across the planet.
I'm going to ask you to go back a little bit, only because I'm stuck there. And if I'm stuck there, maybe someone else is stuck.
Probably, yeah.
Um, so let's go back to the formation of the pyramids.
Mm-hmm.
So using this system, this solid, just using the system, the
Yeah.
technology system. How were the who created those pyramids? How were they created? Were they created using this system? Like, how were things lifted? How were they?
That's a great question. Yeah, nobody really knows for
Yeah,
sure. It looks like, and again, from the intuitive reports that we've pieced together and from Casey's readings and other sources,
like, was this technology used to actually form it? My thought is
yeah,
yes.
yeah, it's
Okay.
like a self-use. Like I could see them maybe building the very core. Think of the if you've seen a cross section of the pyramid, you see these king's chamber and queen's chamber and these grand passageways, and there's a passageway down to the the under part of the pyramid. There's a chamber down there. So if you do a cross section like that, probably the very core part was built first with the capacitors at the top of the king's chamber. So they've been built a basic system and did their splitting and ionizing and whatnot so that they could then use that system to build the rest of the pyramid. There's a really cool principle that I'm still learning about um, that has to do with creating dimensional shifts and also electromagnetic and gravitational shifts using this plasma technology. It's just the coolest thing. And it's kind of hard to explain without getting really technical. But the gist of it is I came up with I might have told you this, came up with a good analogy, and that is if you've got a nicely made bed, like think of a nicely made bed with a bedspread on it.
Oh, I don't have to think about it. That's
Okay.
exactly how I make my bed
Okay. Perfectly every day, I'm sure.
every day. It is the truth.
Yes.
Yes, continue.
All right. So if you press down on one corner
Mhm,
of the bed, you'll make this impression. Like I've got a one of those memory foam beds over here.
mhm,
So if you press down on this memory foam mattress, it's going to make this impression that's going to stay in there for a little bit, and then eventually it rises up. But if you press down and there's, let's say, a ball or a bowling ball on the other side of the bed, and you press down just in the right way, that bowling ball is going to kind of roll towards this dip that you just made on the other side of the bed.
mhm,
It'll roll towards it. It'll be attracted towards the dip. And that's essentially the technology that we're looking at. Um, in this plasma field, think of the bedspread as the plasma field that we've created now that's charged particles and stuff, ionized. And you press down or you make an impression into this field somehow, then something that fits in that impression is going to be attracted to it.
mhm,
It'll be drawn to fit exactly into that impression.
mhm,
And if you had an infinitely wide bedspread and infinitely wide bed, you could keep that thing rolling. You could keep that ball rolling and just keep on pressing a little bit ahead of it and press a little bit ahead of it and press a little bit ahead of it. And that ball would just keep on rolling and rolling and rolling. So that's a principle of using this plasma field to cause movement, motion, manifestation. And the kicker is when you impress an electromagnetic field within this plasma field, there's a gravitation effect that happens. If you have a standing electromagnetic wave within this plasma field, it creates gravity. There's a bending of space-time that goes around this field that you created, this standing wave.
Hmm.
It's just a property of what happens. And my contention is that these builders of this pyramid knew all of this.
Hmm.
It's again, it's a simple system. It's a natural system. It's just the way things work in this universe. But somehow you can harness this and create this gravitational effect that counters gravity on the planet, and up she goes, up she rises. Whatever you create this electromagnetic field around will have both a gravitational field opposite of downward gravity. You'd have some upward gravity,
Hmm.
and you could move it like that bowling ball would move across the bed.
Yeah, hence
I
the
don't know if I explained that well or
no,
not, but trying to,
listen, I am seeing the visuals and it really does make sense to me. And where I go with what you just said is um as humans, we're still in such a dense form.
mhm.
We're still very much in a solid state, with some individuals a lot more liquid. We're moving more into that phase. We're open to it.
Yeah,
But because we're so dense yet, um, it's hard for us to, I think, receive some of what you're saying. And I think this is what was meant when Nikola Tesla said, we're just not ready for this information yet.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
not quite responsible yet because we're still too dense in even being open to such a simple concept. I
yeah.
think that is changing. I think that, I mean, it's evident in you, it's evident in me. Not that I understand it completely,
Oh,
but
I don't either, but
but there's
I
something about,
understand just enough to be dangerous.
well, just enough to say there's something about that that makes sense. And so what I do with this is how quickly my mind works, is what I do is then I go back and I say, well, then how do I do that in my day-to-day life? And I'm
Yeah,
a very creative person and
yeah,
I'm a relational person. And I can see how what you just described, how that is
translatable. Yeah,
translatable, transferring into my day-to-day life. I can see how I say something that's kind to a neighbor, and then on the other side of this plasma field, how that has a that 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 has an impact.
yeah. That's a great way to put this.
Yeah,
Is
that's how I'm trying to, that's how
Yeah,
I'm
let's
making
bring
it
it back
logical
to
to
the
me.
personal level
Yeah,
because
yeah.
whatever principle works on this huge macro level must work on the micro level. That's this holographic universe, how it's constructed.
Right.
So I think that dharma and karma, we've had episodes on that.
Mhm.
Dharma and karma are also driven by the same principle of you make this impression
Mhm.
in this field and something of like size, shape, value creation is going to be attracted to it. So whatever it's that idea of what you put out comes back to you. So
Mhm.
the impression that you make in this collective field, that a similar thing is going to be attracted to you automatically.
Mhm.
So you could think of that as the karmic dharmic system at work there. I think it even applies to creativity, like you said, with visualization.
Mhm.
So if you impress a visualized image into this field, into this, you could call it a personal plasmic field. You impress this visualized image into it. You You impress it with a highly charged magnetic uh, charge, like an emotional charge, then something of like value is going to be attracted to that impression. And
Mhm.
it's going to start manifesting into your life. It's attracted to you. I think that system on the personal level and on the macro level work the same way.
Right. And again, how I'm listening and how I'm hearing it, how I process information. As an example, we did an intuitive report for some folks a couple weeks back, and one of those intuitive reports for a person was a dharma report. That dharma report said that this person had a strong understanding about intention,
Hmm.
and that that just needed to be given attention so that this person could mature in their understanding of how important intention is to creating,
Yeah.
opposed
Yeah.
to wanting to rush it, or, so there's a maturity of that process.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm seeing that as another window for how we as creative beings, which I think every single human is, that no matter where you stand, if you do one thing that you're really interested in, pay attention to that
Hmm.
and pay attention to how you are creating your plasma,
Your field,
your
field
little
testing,
field.
we're back to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pay
Yeah.
attention to it without a lot of harshness either. I mean, just pay attention.
Yeah.
And and I think that will move us out of this solid form and move us more into the fluidity of how these things move, come back.
Hmm.
I mean, it almost brings our attention back to how to live a life well lived.
Yeah. And you'd think it should be a simple system. Living a good life ought to be a simple system, just like um, infinite energy in the universe, tapping into that ought to be a simple system.
Mm-hmm.
It should be. I was just talking to one of my students yesterday about visualization, um, and saying kind of the same thing about this ought to, it really should be simple. It must be simple. It can't be all this complex mumbo jumbo that we're trying to make it into.
Mm-hmm.
And creation should be just you picture what you want, you energize it with strong emotion, you and then you stop before any doubt starts creeping in and infiltrating your image,
And you
and then
follow
you
through.
and then you'll let it go, and then you
Mhm.
act accordingly. You act to prepare the way for this bowling ball to roll into the intentional
Yes.
impression that you just made in your field,
Yeah.
and it should roll in. The creation ought to happen just according to these very simple principles. we
And
get we get in our own way by starting to doubt. We're starting to fear. We're starting to um, mm, take action counter to allowing this thing to roll into our manifestation.
yeah, we've talked about patterns, how productive patterns, unproductive patterns
Yeah,
contribute to that as
beliefs.
well.
Yeah.
So back to what does all of this have to do with the pyramids and why the
Yeah.
pyramids, so why do we think why were the pyramids formed? For a lot of reasons. This is a big question. Why were they formed? What did they leave us to ponder and wonder?
Yeah.
And is this very simple technology solution a way to help us answer those questions?
Hmm. I I personally think that they're so multidimensional that they have personal symbology as well as um, macro Earth symbology encoded into them, and they also have this universal symbology encoded into them. I think it's the way things work, and it's standing right in front of us. And as we, bit by bit, we tease apart how this system works, we're also going to be discovering our own how creation works inside of us. So I think there's a macro and a micro going on here. I think
Mhm.
it even mirrors the human body Um, like take the Great Pyramid, for instance. I think these systems and channels and passageways in the pyramid symbolically represent how the the ductless glands in the body work and how the pineal gland works with the pituitary gland and the thalamus and hypothalamus and all of this stuff works. They're represented by these different components of the pyramid and these passageways,
Mm-hmm.
as well as the medulla oblongata. And like, there's some really cool research that people have done and overlays of
Mm-hmm.
organs of the nervous system and endocrine system. And I think it's also um, a symbology of our own journey, the rise and fall and rise again of our journey of consciousness into the planet. So there's all this symbology of the movement of the tunnels in and below the pyramid symbolize how we fell into this entrapment period and how we're rising back up out of entrapment in the physical. So that it's this multidimensional thing, and it's a an ionization station that creates this plasma technology that we can use for gravitational effects.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool too.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. We know it's very, very ancient because there are no hieroglyphics anywhere in especially the Great Pyramid, but the pyramids of Giza, no hieroglyphics. So it predates any of that. Um, and the symbology and the precision is just fantastical.
Yeah.
It's just even hard to, once you start digging into some of the mathematics that are involved and phi and pi ratios, and it's just mind blowing
Mm-hmm.
how precise and how tuned it is to the size of the earth and the circumference of the earth and the directionalities of the poles and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow, no way did these guys at 4000 BC know any of this stuff. It was
Yeah.
probably a
Right.
vague memory at that point.
Right. That's what we want to keep telling ourselves that they
Hmm.
didn't know that. Right. We
Yeah.
want, that's the narrative that's the story we want to keep perpetuating.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's how could they have known that? Well, how could they have not?
Yeah.
And how is it that we don't know it?
Yeah. How did it get so forgotten if it was so important and so
That's
powerful? How did
right.
it
Right.
possibly get forgotten?
Right. Right.
From
Yeah.
our intuitive research, we saw that there was some kind of catastrophe that happened about 9,600 years BC that melted the glacial systems in the northern hemisphere, and oceans rose and earths quaked and plate tectonics tectonicted, and things happened that
Do you
shook
think
this whole planet up.
do you think that's possibly when the crystal fell down or because the crystal is not on the
Yeah,
top?
it's hard to tell whether from the reports, it's hard to tell whether we did that to ourselves or whether there was we had some asteroids that came to the planet or comets that hit, and that triggered all of these upheavals, and it just happened to break at the same time, and then we just key people that knew about it were lost, and we just forgot it. It just fell into dormancy and then
Mhm.
got buried by the sands of the Sahara. So we don't know what caused what exactly,
Mhm.
but they do coincide at the same time.
Yeah, so we don't know what happened to that crystal because that crystal is not on top of the pyramid.
No, no, it might have actually just been tuned too high and just shattered and
Yeah.
blown up, and fragments are here, there, and everywhere.
So would it be fair to say that the pyramid is still active? It's still a living, breathing, functional, it's doing its job
I
thing?
doubt that. No. Yeah.
Really?
I think it would need the pumping of the water through it, and it would need to be sealed in certain places, and it would need that crystal on top to be functional. It's still functioning as a symbol though. We can still decipher the the symbology of our human journey and the symbology of our physiology as well,
Hmm.
and of how we are creators. But
No, I'm just saying because I know there are other folks that say that
it's still doing its thing.
they go in and they experience something energetically.
Yeah, there's got to be some kind of remnant resonant energy that's going on just because of the resonance of it, the mathematical resonance of the pyramid with the planet.
Hmm.
There's got to be something going on there.
And that's what you think possibly could be contributing to people experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a ghost of its former energy that it was cranking through.
Well, if the way you describe that, if we look at your version here of the plasma, that could be that wave of plasma that still carries through, right?
Yeah.
The
And
echoes,
ways,
the echoes
yeah.
in that keep the
And it
energy
might
stream
be, yeah,
moving.
it could be that even without the crystal system that it had, even without that, it's still able to channel some of that energy in and do some of its
Mhm.
original intended work that it was doing to stabilize the planet and whatnot, distribute energy. Yeah, we got
Wow. Wow,
there's
Paul.
more mysteries definitely with it. That's the fun of this thing. That's what keeps me up at night sometimes, researching this.
So let's
And
talk then about the alien portion of this. I'm going to use the word alien,
yeah,
even when I say that, I'm pretty much convinced that I don't even want to use that word anymore, but I don't know what other words to use.
yeah.
Us back then, maybe I'll say it that way.
The ancients, the old
Yeah,
ones.
the ancients, the old ones, the original creators of the planet.
Yeah,
You insert whatever word you want to put. I don't know, but
yeah.
so other planets, other folks from the rest of the universe.
We have enough
What are
intuitive reports though that say that we were them. Like
no.
I even personally have some reports from 10,000 BC that said that I was part of a group that was distributing genetic coding to humanity. And we would distribute telepathically genetic upgrades and genetic reprogramming of the species. So, but that was me, and many other people that were involved in this work. And the people who built the pyramids are walking around today, and the souls that built these things and that knew this technology are still here. It was us. Um, and then it also in the intuitive reports says that we had strong ties to different star systems, like the Sirius star system or the Centaurs, and we've talked about that in other episodes too. Um, the Orion system. So yeah, it seems like it's complicated, but when you really pull back, it's more of a simple system that consciousness visiting this planet just started exploring and expanding and experimenting on the planet, and we just kind of got stuck here.
So I think about you and that past life that you just referenced of
Mhm.
um, of this simple technology formula. So I think of you having multiple thousands, I don't know the number, lifetimes, life experiences. But that one particular one has carried with it a lot of understanding, a lot of information. So now you're Paul Madar.
Mhm.
You're in a solid form in this lifetime. However, you're not at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think that's another thing as I've heard people talk about these new humans or the new evolution of our species coming in. I think the more I you and I keep talking, I keep seeing you as a culmination of everything and not as the person that, has a wife, two beautiful daughters, and is a teacher, thinks he's funny, but not always funny.
Hey, hey,
Hey,
hey,
hey.
hey.
You know, that what I'm saying is you're multidimensional. You are
Yeah.
multidimensional. So you are solid, but boy, you've you have an understanding of how to be fluid with this liquid gas into the plasma routine.
Hmm.
And that I think has occurred because of your devotion to these topics this entire lifetime.
Yeah. My desire to stretch into trying to figure or receive or expand into greater awareness
Greater
of
awareness.
what's going on. Yeah.
These urgings, these inklings you've had of all these different questions, these curiosities you've had.
Yeah.
And again, I want to say that some people have, maybe they don't have those inklings. Maybe they're a very physically based lifetime.
Yeah. For
It's
now.
still,
Yeah.
for now, you're still receiving something, even if you're just physically based.
Yeah.
But that's how I'm seeing you now. That's in this lifetime, you're a little bit of everything. You're multidimensional. You keep trying to understand how to be more multidimensional.
Hmm.
You're open to that. But I think that's what when I listen to you, I think, this is Paul as an example of just a regular old guy. He's got regular responsibilities,
Still got to pay the bills and
still has
yeah,
to pay the bills and
put
doesn't,
food on the table.
that's right, has the worries, the woes of everything, but also does many other things to keep this dialogue open and helpful for people that have questions like you did, to keep answering them in a different way. We talk
Yeah.
about perspective a lot with creativity.
Yeah.
So I think the ever-changing perspective that we have also will give us different angles to look at things that maybe we thought we had answered in some way.
I think you're right. I think the changing perspective is what drives creativity.
Mhm.
Like the very first thing is you have to start wondering, what if I do this? Or what if this belief that I have isn't actually true? Or what if I put this on top of that? What happens? That drives putting things together in new ways or shaking off old beliefs that no longer work for you or um, pulling seemingly disparate elements and people together into a new configuration and something cool comes out of that. Those are all creative endeavors. And I think it all comes from that perspective shift of what if or curiosity or um,
And I
let's
think
try it.
if that perspective also doesn't include power, control, um,
Domination.
domination,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
if you want a perspective and again back to what in the word intention, the intensity, if your intention is I've got to have power, control, and my perspective is going to be on this, it still keeps you in a much more solid, dense form.
Yeah. Yeah. It's there's like
So
a hierarchy of intentions you could think. Like
yeah, yeah.
lower intentions might be power and domination, and higher would be, I don't know, what is a service to humanity or love or compassion or
All right, those what if questions come in it with a different tinge. Like the
yeah.
perspective of God.
How could I serve more people is a totally different perspective
Yeah.
than how could I get more money, you know?
Right. How could I get a corner on the market for this information?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or or
I
how can
think
I or how
that's
can
got
I
to
be
be what
viewed as the smarty pants of the neighborhood?
yeah, more
People
ego
with ego
gratification.
gratification. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
That's
Paul.
got to be what Richard Rudd is talking about with the new human that is we're on the verge of moving into this new human configuration of how we go about working with each other and how we go about living on this planet with this planet and being partners with the universe, being partners. He calls it synarchy, where instead of hierarchy, you're working in synchrony. So it's a synarchy with others, and we're all together and we're building together um, something even greater than the parts of the whole.
What's a takeaway, hopefully? A couple of them.
I, that's a good question. I'm going to say, let's try to boil it down to something really simple, like personal creation, personal creativity.
Mhm.
Um, if we can shift, if a person can shift their perspective into this idea that you're walking around in a soup, like the air that you walk through to get from this room to that room, the air that you walk through is a is a plasma of sorts. It's got charged particles in it. It's a field that you're moving through, and you're creating ripples even as you walk from room to room,
Mhm.
or as you think this thought, you're creating ripples, or as you send a text, you're creating ripples in this field. And this field is always there, has always been there. Everything you do and think and feel creates ripples. I think that's probably the most important principle to get out of all of this plasma talk. And those ripples, they go someplace. They do things. If you repeat the ripples over and over and over, um, you're kind of creating the standing wave that we talked about.
Mhm.
It creates a form of some sort. Or with your intentions, you're pressing down on the bed and you're drawing a creation, whether it's a fear impression or whether it's a positive creation that you're pressing down with your visualization. It's being drawn towards you because of this field that's around you all the time.
Mhm.
I know it sounds a little daunting, and then maybe one of the reasons why we don't like thinking about this because every thought and word and deed becomes impressed in this field. That's a lot of responsibility.
So it's the shift in perspective
Hmm.
can put a different way of looking at responsibility. I know that it does give you freedom to understand that you really are the creator of your universe.
Yeah. I think the creatorship uh, comes under more personal control when you get a handle on directing your thoughts.
Mhm.
Like if you can choose your thoughts and choose to not think a particular thought and direct your thoughts and focus your thoughts and concentrate your thoughts, that's probably the most important tool that you can practice
Yep.
is directing and choosing your thoughts. Because that's where the shift in perspective comes from. That's where
Right.
the impressions, the intentions, the responses, everything comes from that focused thought. I think that's overall what the pyramids are showing us is that when you focus consciousness, you have great power at your disposal.
Well done, Paul.
Once Upon a Quantum Leap is for your reference only. This podcast and the material is intended solely as educational information and should not be used for diagnosis or treatment of any health problem, financial, or legal advice.
You can listen to full episodes and find out about Paul and Capucine at onceuponaquantumleap.com. All reports shared on this show have been released with permission, and identifiers have been removed for individuals' privacy.
The intuitive reports referred to in each episode are available on our website, on the podcast page, and through links in our show notes. We encourage you to listen to those for greater context.
If you're interested in obtaining your own intuitive report, go to quantuminsight.co. That's quantuminsight.co. You can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.